it felt like I got hit with this wall. And that's the only way I know how to explain it, because I just got hit with this emotion. And it wasn't emotion. I just got hit with this presence, and it was her. And I have never felt that much peace in my life. I've never felt that much love in my life. I've never felt that light. I have goosebumps talking about it. And I felt like she was all around me, but she was expanded.
Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. This is a podcast to inspire, uplift, show forth the love of God, and help usher in the spiritual awakening. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, author, and teacher, Jay Spillers. I have a guest today, Kris, who's going to tell about her experience and her book. Kris, how are you?
I'm well, Jay. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So you had a shared near-death experience with your dog. Why don't you just tell us what that was about?
Yeah, totally. So it wasn't a near-death experience. It was a shared death experience. And I didn't even know what a shared death experience was. I ended up, after this happened, reading this amazing book about them called At Heaven's Door. Have you read that before?
I haven't read that one, no.
Okay, it's really cool. It's all about shared death experiences, and it totally just opened my mind up to this. But anyway, so let me see, where do I start? So my dog was like my child, like really, really close. I always said that she was the ET to my Elliot. We were like really close, like definitely had some past life soul connections. And you know, she was getting old, and it was time for her to move on. And we had a veterinary person come over to euthanize her at home, and we were waiting for this person to come. And it was about half an hour before they came, and we put her in her favorite spot in the house, which was in our bedroom. We have sliding doors that open up to our pool, and it's surrounded by trees, and she loved to just sit there and watch the squirrels. So we had her there, and we were just giving her so much love. We were telling her the story of her life. We were just showering her with love. We were telling her it was okay to go, and we were here, and she was safe, and you know, all the things that hopefully she would want to hear at the end. And we're having this really beautiful moment. It's this gorgeous day out. It was May 25th last year, but it was in the 90s. It was so pretty, perfect blue skies. And we're like, wow, this beautiful day for her. And we're having this beautiful moment. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this hawk comes. And we don't really see hawks that often, at least not up close. And this hawk comes, and he grabs this squirrel out of our yard. And it was like, it was such a like juxtaposition to this beautiful moment that we were having. And he takes this squirrel, and it's flailing, and he brings it up to a tree branch. And my husband Shane and I are both like, okay, this is kind of morbid, but you know, we're just going to ignore that. That's weird. We're just going to be back present with her. And so we're sitting there being present with her, and the vet finally comes, and there's this the moment when it's going to happen. And I'm sitting there petting her, and I saw her soul rise out of her body. It was kind of like this shimmering, it almost looked like a mirage, but it was like I knew the moment she was gone. I saw it happen. It was like slightly purple tinted, and it just happened. And then I realized she was gone, and I knew it. And so, you know, as you can imagine, my husband and I are totally devastated, totally heartbroken. We're just, you know, we don't have kids yet. I'm actually pregnant, but we didn't have kids at the time. And she was our child. So she was little. She was 14 pounds. So the vet had this basket to bring her out to the car. And so we lay her in the basket really nice. We walk the vet out to her car, and we say one final goodbye to her body, and we thank the vet. And we're just like torn apart, right? And we walk back in our house, and it felt like I got hit with this wall. And that's the only way I know how to explain it, because I just got hit with this emotion. And it wasn't emotion. I just got hit with this presence, and it was her. And I have never felt that much peace in my life. I've never felt that much love in my life. I've never felt that light. I have goosebumps talking about it. And I felt like she was all around me, but she was expanded. And it was almost as if every little particle of air had become her. And she was everywhere. And she was completely surrounding me. And it was her presence. I'd know her presence anywhere. But it was so light, and it was so free. And I just felt so wrapped up in this emotion. And I started laughing, and I was like crying happy tears, and I was laughing. It was like what I expected to be the saddest, most heartbreaking moment of my life was just so joyful and peaceful and light. And my husband's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, it's her. We have a Nest Cam in our house, and I saved the footage because it was like such a crazy moment. But I was like, oh my God, it's her. She's everywhere. It's Soda. Her name was Soda Pop. It's Soda. She's all around me. I could feel her. And Shane, my husband, is like, yeah, she's always with us. She'll always be there. And I could tell he wasn't feeling it. And I was just basking in this for like 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden I said, oh, it's starting to fade. And as soon as I said that, Shane goes, oh my God, I feel her. And then he had the exact same experience. And it was so like her, because when we would come home together, she would spend all this time saying hi to one of us, and then she would like run to the other person. So it was like she spent equal time. So like she came and spent that time with me, and then she went to him. And then he had that experience. And then she finally left, and we didn't feel her presence anymore. And the next day, we were just heartbroken. We sat out in our yard, and we were just sad and crying. And all of a sudden, that same freaking hawk shows up. And it's like a big, big bird, right? Like it's a hawk. I've never seen a hawk that close. And it showed up, and it just sat on a branch, and it just watched us. And then the next day, we found this beautiful, perfect hawk feather. And then the day after that, we went to this wildlife exhibit, and the first thing we saw when we walked in was a hawk. And then on the last day, my husband was working in his home office, and he just had this feeling like something was watching him. And he turned and looked, and it was that hawk. And finally I was like, all right, I have to Google what this means, And I looked it up, and apparently hawks are messengers from the other side. And they help spirits move over. And like, if you see a hawk killing an animal in front of you, like most people think, oh, it's something like morbid, it's a bad omen, but it's actually the opposite. It symbolizes the cycle of life, and it's this really beautiful thing. And it was so interesting that it happened right when she passed. But anyway, it was like one of the craziest experiences I've ever had.
Are you looking for a devotional that will radically transform your walk with Christ and revolutionize the world at the same time? Check out my latest book, Walk as Children of the Light. This book focuses on everything you need to be fully equipped and discipled in Christ: prayer, meditation, scripture, love, gratitude, and much, much more. Available on Amazon, 5-star rating. This is like the first time I've ever heard about like a shared near-death experience with a dog. I've heard of like NDEs where people saw their pets when they crossed to the other side, and I've seen shared death experiences where you see a loved one, like a person. This is the first time I've ever heard one where a person had a shared death experience about a dog before.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show like how close we were. And I actually just forgot a part of it. You just reminded me. So after that whole thing happened, I just like laid down in my bed. I just needed a moment to just like lay down. And I had this really intense vision where I was going through this tunnel, and the tunnel was made of kind of like dark clouds. Are you still there? I can't see you anymore. Jay. It looks like maybe you're loading. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, your screen went away for a minute. Yep, I can hear you. So I was laying in bed.
So you were going down.
And I had this vision that my body was being lifted through this tunnel. And the tunnel was made up of like kind of these dark storm clouds, and I was rising up. And then every once in a while, there would be like almost like a lightning strike where there would be something to my left or my right would light up. And when that happened, and it would just be flashes, I would see these other worlds. And it was almost like I felt like I was on this highway and I was looking at these different exits off the highway, but I knew that they weren't meant for me. And it was like intuitively, I knew that they were parallel worlds or parallel realities. And I rose up and then I kind of snapped out of it. But when I ended up reading that book after At Heaven's Door about shared death experiences, you know, it's really interesting. People will actually go through the tunnel like I did. And I had no idea this was a thing right before this happened. People will actually go through the tunnel. People will have a life review, like not people who are dying, like people who are sitting with their loved one. Or hospice workers, or people will have an out of body experience where they'll see the person who had just deceased and they'll be out of their body. So it's really fascinating.
So, like when you saw your dog shimmering, did you actually see like light with it? Was it like a silhouette of the dog, or?
It wasn't a silhouette. It just looked like energy kind of coming up. And I don't know how to explain it. It was just, it was like, I say shimmering because what's the best way to describe it? Like, it looked like I could see through it. It was transparent, but it like distorted the view. You know, does that make sense? Like it was shimmering in the sense that it was not like sparkling, but in the sense that there was like movement. It just looked like energy kind of rising up. And it, like I said, it was slightly purple tinted.
Mm-hmm. So did this transform your life, or were you pretty spiritual before this experience?
I was super spiritual before this experience. Yeah, this happened last year. And I mean, if you read my book, I've been on a spiritual path for over 2 decades. And I think that that's probably part of the reason I was so open to it. And because her and I were so close, you know, we had that connection. And she visits me in dreams all the time. Actually, my dad just passed away in February. And leading up to his death, I had dreams about all these different family members. And I remember I had one about my grandma, and she looked so young and she had all this like jewelry and makeup on, and I'd never seen her wear jewelry or makeup. And it was like, oh wow, that's probably how he remembered her, right? Like that's probably at her prime, like that age, right? And maybe she was dressing up because she knew he was coming. And I had a dream about my grandpa who I had never met because he passed before I was born. And we had this moment in the dream where he was like, it's so great to meet you. You're so beautiful. It's, you know, and it was just like, it just felt so real. And then after my dad passed away, I've had several dreams where he was just in them, but I had 2 that really felt like visitations where, you know, in the dream, I was like, I miss you so much. And I gave him this huge hug and he was like, I know, but I'm going to be like flying around every once in a while. So don't worry about it. So yeah, I don't know. I've always kind of had that connection through dreams. Like I'll have dreams about people I haven't seen in a long time, and then suddenly they'll call, or I'll learn some big life event happened, you know, things like that.
So what was the dreams with your dog?
Oh, I've had so many. I mean, she passed, was it May, June, July, August, a year and 3 months ago. And I have dreams about her at least once a week, all kinds of dreams.
And these dreams, do they feel like you're awake, like real, and you know that the person or the pet has passed, and you have full awareness?
Yeah. A lot of them. Like I was just saying, some of them are just random dreams and they're just there in the background. But there's other dreams like that one with the couple with my dad, where he'll tell me he loves me so much, and I'll give him a hug and I'll tell him I miss him, and he'll say, I know, you know, and I can feel him. And same with Soda. I've had dreams where I've just held her and it's been so good to have her back, you know? So there's definitely dreams. And then there's ones that feel a lot more like visitations.
Yeah, because I've had a couple of visitation dreams too, like where my dad came and visited me, and I was totally aware that it was a dream. I was totally aware that he'd passed, but I knew that he'd come to visit me, and it felt as real as when you're awake
Yeah.
for me in those visitation dreams.
Yeah. It's really special when it
So, what
happens.
is your like spirit? Oh yeah, oops, sorry. So, what started your spiritual journey?
Yeah, great question. So, like a lot of people who have had spiritual awakenings or who have dedicated their lives to helping others, my story starts with my own trauma. So, when I was 12 years old, I was sexually abused by a family member for 4 years. Pardon. And I had this really big, tight knit, extended family. And when they found out what happened, about half of them disowned me. And I had these cousins who were my best friends. And one day I was no longer permitted to see them anymore. It was like one day we were inseparable. The next day they were like ghosts. I have no idea what they were told. Holidays became divided. The family of my abuser would take mornings, and my parents and I would take afternoons, and so on. And so this left me with all of this PTSD and self-harming behaviors because I had all of these negative emotions like guilt and anger that as a young adolescent, I didn't know how to cope with. Most adults don't know how to cope with those types of emotions. And my life changed when someone handed me a book. And it changed my way of thinking, my way of being, my way of moving through life. And this was in 2002. And I remember as I read it thinking, wow, this really feels like the truth. And I like to say I was like a sleeper agent because something inside of me just woke up. And when I finished that book, I started reaching for more and I just became insatiable. I started reading every personal development, spiritual, new age, psychology, whatever, you name it, book I could get my hands on. And I started attending workshops with these authors. I started trying all these different healing modalities. I found all these teachers to study under. And my life started to change. I started to really see synchronicities and miracles happen in my life. And as I started to get better, my mother began to get worse. So her family had been ripped down the seams, and she didn't have all these teachers and healing modalities that I did. And that started to manifest as physical illness for her. She became very, very sick with serious illnesses and with all these strange afflictions that her doctors could barely explain. And so they gave her pills. And then they started giving her pills for the side effects of those pills. And they were just throwing anything at the wall, hoping something would stick. And she slept all the time, except for a few hours of daylight. She would nod off at the dinner table. She would fall down. She would forget conversations we had the day before. And so I had this compounded guilt that I had destroyed my family and broken my mother. But in the end, my mother was inadvertently my biggest teacher because for every step she took deeper into depression and illness, I climbed hand over hand in the other direction out of that dark tunnel because I was seeing firsthand what happens to a human body and spirit when they go down the path she did. And then I was seeing what happened to my own body and spirit as I decided to change my mind about the nature of reality. And I made this promise to myself, and it's a promise that I've kept to this day, that I would do everything I could to heal physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I would always prioritize my health in those categories. And to this day, you still find me studying under teachers, reading all the books, because I believe learning and growth is never over. And eventually I took a life coach training. I decided it was time to give back. And I'm a coach now. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. I just wrote my book, just got published. It's called Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. It was endorsed by 3 people from The Secret. If you've ever read the book or seen the movie The Secret, it was endorsed by Anita Moorjana, who had a famous near-death experience. Talk about near-death experience. She wrote Dying to Be Me. She had a famous TED Talk about it. And then it was endorsed by John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and about 10 other authors in the spiritual personal development space. So this is what I've dedicated my life to now.
So a lot of times trauma will open you up spiritually, like maybe part of the reason you had the sheer death experience and have the dreams is because you've been opened up through trauma. Because I've heard of the NDEs and people who have spiritually transformative experiences are opened up through trauma. Do you believe that may have happened with you?
I think trauma is often a catalyst to our awakening. And I believe that we choose big life circumstances that we're going to go through before we incarnate. And these are things that will give us the opportunity to grow and learn the lessons we're meant to, right? Because we're here to learn lessons, we're here to grow. And so they kind of ready the soil, plant the seeds, and then it's up to us what we do with them. So I think a lot of times trauma is a catalyst for awakening. So sure, that could open you up to mystical experiences.
And so what are some of the teachings you get into in your book?
Yeah, great question. So I talk a lot about the law of attraction and creating the life of your dreams. But I think most importantly, I talk about all the things that can block our manifesting from happening. It can block us from using the law of attraction. So these are things like unconscious programming, our belief system, repressed emotions that we've been holding on to, grudges that we've been holding on to. Because all of these things can not only seep into your manifesting, they can also do you a lot of harm. They can physically hurt you. They can cause illness. They can cause disease. And they probably block you from having these kind of mystical experiences as well.
So what's one of the ways that you can do the law of attraction and you can actually work on getting rid of these blockages?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. That's what my work is. So, you know, a lot of our belief system happens before the age of 7. Because when we're kids, we are in a theta brainwave state, right? Before the age of 6. So we're basically just getting programmed, right? By the opinions of the adults who grew up around, or we grew up around, cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, the crush who rejected you, the kids who made fun of you on the playground. So all of these things start to form your inner voice, right? The lens through which you view the world. And that affects your belief system, and that affects the thoughts you think, and that affects the emotions that you feel. It's all connected. So when you have things like repressed emotions, it's about feeling those emotions and letting them out, right? Because if you're holding on to anger or shame or resentment or placing blame or judgment on another person, all of that starts to form your lens as well. So it's how you'll view the world. And you're going to manifest more things that make you feel that way, because the law of attraction goes on emotion. The universe kind of works like the Facebook algorithm, right? Like whatever you get emotional about, whatever you invest in that kind of intensity, it thinks, oh, they like that. I'm going to send some more of that their way. And holding on to grudges does the same thing. That's why forgiveness is one of the most important things you can do in your life. You know, it helps get you off the wheel of karma, but more than that, it's poison, right? There's that great Buddhist quote. You know, holding on to anger is like holding on to a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You're the one who gets burned. And so when you're feeling all of those emotions, anger, resentment, rage towards another person, all that is poison, and it's just hurting you, right? So, you know, people might kind of roll their eyes when they hear forgiveness, and immediately their mind jumps to, oh, what so-and-so did to me is unforgivable. Well, no, it's not. Everything is forgivable, because it's not about the other person. It's not for the other person. It's for you, so that you can let go of all that junk that you're holding on to. Because again, it's going to manifest into your life. It's going to hurt you. It can cause disease. It can cause pain. So yeah, there's a lot of modalities that I use with my clients and that I teach in my book as well.
Have you ever wondered whether the Bible was compatible with a near-death experience? In my book, Heaven's Truth, the parallels between the Bible and the near-death experience, your faith will be strengthened while you support this channel. In Heaven's Truth, you will learn about near-death experiences and other similar experiences in the Bible. Support for the Bible contained in NDEs, a central theme that runs through both the Bible and NDEs, how the NDE brings the Bible to life for these modern times, evidence for both the Bible and the NDE, and much more. Great book. Spillers does an excellent job weaving the relationship between NDEs and the scriptures. 5 stars on Amazon, available on Amazon.
So like with forgiveness, it's really about release. And, I guess one of the things with forgiveness too, and talking about like the near-death experience, is that when people die, they have a life review and they feel all of the good and bad they've caused others. So when you start to recognize that they're going to experience everything they caused to you anyway, so it's like, might as well just let it go anyway, because you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and the other thing, I've
You don't really get away with anything.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I said you don't really get away with anything. So, but yeah, go ahead and
Well, I was gonna say one of the the biggest things that happens for near-death experiencers is, yes, they have that review, but there is no judgment, right? They are not judged for a single thing they did in their lifetime. It's all for their learning. They are shown nothing but unconditional love. And that's a lot of what I teach in my book too. I actually talk a lot about near-death experiencers for that reason, that, everything here in this lifetime, Earth is a school, and everything here is for your own learning, your own growth, to have these experiences as a human, to feel these experiences of emotions, but nothing that happens here can hurt the real you. Right? It's like an illusion. Like it's like we've been dropped into this video game world, right? You get to assemble your avatar, right? You choose what you look like, the parents you're going to be born into, where you're going to be born, the race you are, all these things. Because again, it's for your own growth. What's going to set you up to learn the lessons that you're meant to learn, right? And then you get to create your optimal health. You get to create your dream career. And that's when life becomes fun, right? And the cool thing is quantum physics backs all of this up, which is why I teach a lot about quantum physics in my book as well. Because when science backs up all the spirituality and the mysticism, that's when it gets really exciting and you can reach a lot of people. But yes, near-death experiencers all have that life review where they feel how they made other people feel, but there's no judgment, I don't know if you've ever read Dolores Cannon. Have you ever read her work?
I haven't, no.
You would like her. So she was a past life regression hypnotist, and one of her best books, so her books, she wrote 19 or 20 books chronicling her sessions. And her books are literally just the transcribed recordings of her sessions. They're fascinating. They're everything from ET abductions to past lives on other planets and other dimensions, to Jesus, to Nostradamus, like everything. But my favorite book of hers is called Between Death and Life. And this is all the people that she regressed into the place between lifetimes. And it corroborates a lot of what near-death experiencers talk about. But it's honest, it's so fascinating. You would love it. It sounds really up your alley.
Well, there was a guy that I've heard talk before that talked about regressing people to the middle part where they go essentially to the afterlife, between lives or whatever. And he kind of talks about the same thing, and it compares well to the near-death experience, but I don't remember his name offhand.
Yeah, that's what this book is too. It's really great.
So do you use a lot of things like meditation or hypnosis to sort of help people attract things and start to unblock?
Yeah, a lot of different things. So a lot of different healing modalities, definitely meditation, definitely meditation, definitely hypnosis. Also a lot of different journaling techniques, a lot of different visualization techniques. Sometimes when it just comes to feeling your repressed emotions, things like primal screaming, whatever lets you get that junk out. So there's a range of physical modalities that help. There's a range of journaling exercises, and yeah, it's a mix for sure.
So where does a person start really if they want to start to change their life? What's a good place to start?
What a great question. Well, I think first of all, understanding the science behind it is really, really helpful, because when you have knowledge, you're empowered, right? So, if so many people have been through trauma, let's say, we'll use trauma as an example, like you were talking about it earlier, can open you up to spiritual experiences. So let's say you're thinking about that past event, right? And your thought about it triggers an emotion, and you start to feel the same way you felt during that event. And then as you feel that emotion, it triggers your thought. So you get caught in this loop, right? Where your thought triggers your emotion triggers your thought. And oh, did I lose you again?
Just keeps going in.
You're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internet connection?
Yeah. So you were talking about how basically we get caught in a cycle, a loop in our thinking and actions.
Our thinking and our emotions. So when you start to get caught in this cycle, your body creates the exact same chemistry as if you were going through that event. So if we're talking about a stressful event, it releases the same cortisol, it releases the same adrenaline, etc. So your body literally is reliving that past event over and over and over every time you think about it. And now when you live by the emotions of stress, the hormones of stress, it puts your brain into a high beta state. And you can see this on brain scans. It's very disorganized, very chaotic. It's like a bunch of drummers playing at the same time. And so when your brain is working like this, it goes into what's called incoherence, right? That's where it's chaotic, it's out of rhythm. And when your brain is in incoherence, it sends this chaotic signal to your nervous system. And then your nervous system sends that same chaotic signal to your digestive system, your immune system, your endocrine system, your respiratory system, all the systems in your body. So in other words, when your brain is in incoherence, your body is in incoherence. And you can quite literally make yourself sick just from your thoughts alone. Remember, this all started with thinking about your past. So my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, is all about how to shift your thinking, how to change your perspective, especially on the nature of reality, right? Like I've been talking about. Because when you understand what you really are, that you're a spiritual being having a human experience, and that nothing that really happens here can hurt the real you, it starts to shift things, right? So it starts with the knowledge. It starts with changing your thoughts. There's a lot of exercises on changing your thoughts too, because when you're not feeling, when those emotions don't live in your body anymore, when you've released repressed emotions, when you've gotten out of that thought emotion cycle, when you've forgiven, then you can rewire and reprogram your nervous system and brain, because otherwise they've been programmed, right? And you can have all the best intentions of the world, but 95% of the day you're working off this unconscious programming. So you're literally sabotaging yourself 95% of the day. It's only 5% of the day you're consciously creating. So it's getting people to shift all of that unconscious programming, rewrite their nervous system and brain.
With forgiveness is a big component of it, self-forgiveness, because maybe we're not forgiving ourselves, and that's holding us down too.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
Releasing that,
Yeah, absolutely. Forgiveness of others and forgiveness of yourself. And most of that is like wrongdoings that you perceive, right? It's all perceptions anyway. So yes, absolutely. Forgiving yourself is really, really important.
Yeah, and so you have a book. I think you also said you had something else that you're doing for people too.
So I have a gift for listeners. So when you order my book through a specific website, you get the course that goes hand in hand with it for free. So it's an $897 value you get for free. Hopefully you can put the URL in the show notes for me, but if you're listening, it's kind of long. It's changeyourmindtochangeyourreality.com/order book. And you can, if you order the book through there, you still have the option to get ebook, audiobook, paperback from a bunch of different bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Google Books, Apple Books, you name it. But you just have to order through that link to get the course.
Mm-hmm. And so I think you did send the link to me, and I can post that in the descriptions and everything. So
thanks so much.
So yeah, what is like one final word you'd like to leave with the audience?
I would say that we are all in this together, and we are all reflections of each other. We're all parts of the same. You know, people outside of you appear to be separate, but it's all part of this illusion. So, you know, what one person does deeply affects what someone else does, even on the other side of the planet. And quantum physics, again, backs this up, entanglement. But if you hurt another person, that anger, that shame, that guilt, that resentment, whatever it is you make them feel, gets sent out into the quantum field. And the quantum field works like this big mirror. And it sends back to humanity all of those same emotions. It's going to give back to humanity circumstances, situations, people that make people feel anger and guilt and shame and resentment or whatever it is, sadness. So this is why things like cancel culture are so harmful, right? So, you know, and people try to like fight for these causes, right? You can't say you want world peace and be fighting with your coworker or be fighting for something. So the way that we heal a sick society, the way we heal the world is by healing yourself first. And then as you heal yourself, you rise up, you level up, and you become this beacon of light. And you radiate out and you affect your family, your friends, your community. And as they see you rise up, they're going to be inspired and they're going to rise up to your level, and you can give them a helping hand. And then they send that ripple effect out to their family, friends, and community. And this is how we change the world, right? Rising tides lift all ships. Your inner world creates your outer world. So if you want to heal the world, you have to start with healing yourself.
Please like, subscribe to this channel, and share everywhere. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that was a good word. Well, thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was great to be here, and hopefully your listeners got something out of it today. And yeah, be sure to follow me. I'm at Change Your Mind with Kris, Kris with a K, all over the place. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
I spent several years of my life stressed, anxious, and depressed. I needed to find something that would make my life work. For me, that was meditation. With meditation, I found the peace of mind that I was looking for. I found the happiness. And I found a way to improve every area of my life, my emotional life, my spiritual life, my relationships. I was able to discover things about myself. I can give you the tools to meditate. I will walk you through the process and hold your hand. Whether you're a beginner to meditation who's never meditated, or whether you're someone who's tried meditation and it just never seemed to work, we can make it work. Meditation is something that everyone can do, and I can show you how. Check out my course on meditation.